さて、それではお時間となりましたので、これより
We'd now like to start the panel discussion session on the theme Blockchain Beyond
はじめに
Fintech.
パネリストの皆様
I'd like to
ご紹介
introduce
さ
the
せていただ
panelists
き
for
ま
the
す。
session.
トヨタ通商システムズブロッ
From
クチェーンビジネス担当者
Toyota Tsusho Corporation,
様です。
Deputy
大きな
Manager of
拍手でお迎えください。
Blockchain Business, we have Mr. Akinori Koketsu. Please give him a big round of applause.
さて続きまして、住友
The
生命
next
保険
panelist
総合会
is
社
from
デジタル
Sumitomo
イノ
Life
ベーション
Insurance
推進
Company,
室奥山雄二
Digital
様です。
Innovation
大きな
Office,
拍手をお願いい
Mr.
たします。
Yuji Okuyama. Big hands for Mr. Okuyama.
続きまして、住友生命保険
Next
総合会社
is also from Sumitomo Life Insurance Company,
安倍智秀
from the
様です。
Digital Innovation Office, Mr. Tomohide Abe.
よろしくお願い
Big
します。
hands for Mr. Abe.
続きまして EY アドバイザリー
Next
&コン
is
サルティング
from EY Advisory and Consulting Co., Senior Manager Ms. Yoko Murakami.
よろしくお願いいたします。そして最後に
IO, and lastly, the moderator for the session from SBI R3 Japan, Head of Business Department and Coda Evangelist, Mr. Munetoshi Yamada. So from here on, I'd like to pass on to Mr. Yamada. Mr. Yamada, the floor is yours. Hello, everyone. My name is Yamada from SBI R3 Japan. In this session, we have guests from 3 companies, and they will introduce the projects that they are actually working on. What we want to communicate through this session is that, firstly, blockchain is becoming more widely used in areas outside finance as well. And in this event, we have many guests from overseas. And there are also participating in various sessions, but also want to communicate that these initiatives are also taking place in Japan. And the third is that through the introduction of blockchain, many people are probably thinking of trying to utilize blockchain. And people are starting to test the usage. And that was also a point that I wanted to communicate to the audience today. So to begin with, I would like to ask Mr. Koketsu to speak. And I'd like to talk on the topic, points to note when building a blockchain as observed in developing commercial transaction DX platform. And my name is Koketsu from Toyota Tsusho Systems. To begin with, allow me to introduce our company. Toyota Tsusho Systems is a subsidiary, 100% IT subsidiary of Toyota Tsusho Corporation. Because of the time constraint, I won't explain myself too much. But most people cannot read my name, Koketsu. And people ask how many strokes are in my name. In fact, 67 strokes comprise my name when my name is written in kanji character. But I don't want to waste time anymore, so I'd like to describe what we're going to talk about today. Now, the blockchain for us is to be utilized in actual practice rather than just being a POC. And we want to share some know-how in that respect. Now, the blockchain is expected to bloom in the future, but we want it in our hands while still in a bud-like stage. And so we like to use blockchain in promoting commercial transaction DX that we were considering. Now, the blockchain does provide a lot of benefits, but many challenges as well. And we were researching, we identified CODA, and we knew that CODA is able to resolve many of the challenges, so I wanted to talk about that. But even with CODA, I think there are still some challenges. So let me go into my presentation. Now, generally speaking, what are the benefits of blockchain? And if we just limit to the enterprise area, then it's high security and high availability, doesn't stop, and low running costs. And it can be simply automated. In other words, a smart contract is one example. So if we take off these benefits, then the commercial transaction DX platform, and so things like the e-contract for quotation, providing, ordering, invoicing, payment. I think all these things that we want to do as part of our platform can be utilized on blockchain. But when we start to implement, we have started to identify areas of some challenges. So let's look at these. The generally spoken of blockchain benefit, high security. Now, often people talk about that it's not possible to manipulate based on the hash linkage. Maybe the resistance against manipulation may be high, but sharing of the block leads to a secrecy issue, or sometimes some cost is required. Now, of course, there are benefits of the smart contract, of course, but high security, high availability, low operation cost, we need to look at these areas in little more details. In that respect, the general blockchain, and as illustrated here, each company has node, and if company A, company B has node, if there are transactions between the two, then the transaction block of a company A and B is shared by company C, which is not relevant to the transaction. And so there is, I think, trying to prevent manipulation, but related to security, by this, the data block, having this being held by other companies, so secrecy comes down. So even if the data block is made confidential, if you just look at the block header, then you can understand the two companies dealing with each other. And just between nodes, the process cannot be completely resolved, but an administrative server is required, high load. And in multi-mode, there's a potential of stoppage. And as for operating cost or running cost, I think infrastructure cost is quite high, and at the same time, you need high level of capable engineers. And these are the type of costs that is required for blockchain. And let me look into IT infrastructure in more details. An example is contract. If the contract is signed between the two companies, if we think about a system of e-contract, 500 companies participating, and the disk is held on the cloud, and hard disk cost, if we just compare the two, in the centralized system, if it is 500 companies, you only have to pay about 750,000 yen per year. But that data needs to be held by all the 500 companies. This will end up being 375 million yen. So in that respect, it may be difficult to use. And so in that environment, what we found was CODA. And the transaction blocks is not shared outside the transacting parties. If it is a transaction between company A and company B, then the block is not shared by company C, and we feel that this is a significant benefit of adopting this. So the first challenge was the low and the data secrecy. So the data which are not relevant will not be stored outside. And so this should resolve the issue related to data secrecy. And high load of the administrative server and large nodes potentially leading to stoppage. This issue is difficult to resolve. And other challenges, IT infrastructure being high. This may be somewhat high in comparison to the general centralized system, but this is other blockchain. This is still quite cheap. And with regards to high cost of engineering, the development language used instead is Kotlin, and so the cost is considered to be lower in comparison to other approaches. So in that respect, what we are producing right now, and we intend to launch the system in January 2021, and based on Agile, we are using CODA, and between company and others, and one node per company. And we intend to start with some e-contracting service. In other words, to sign contract electronically. This is what we'd like to start from January next year. And the reason why we're starting with the contracting service is because the benefits are easy to see. You don't need to see or you don't need to post the contract. So that is likely to reduce cost quite significantly. And the contracting is accelerated. And while the remote work is being promoted, you don't need the fixed seals and so forth, which is beneficial. So that's the reason we are starting with the contracting and the quotation, invoicing, and also the ordering and the payment. We can use the virtual currency for the payment, and this should also help the operation of the SMEs as well. When we are able to realize this, then this achieves traceability of the supply chain and the blockchain use case. Often people talk about the supply chain traceability, but there is an issue of who is going to pay for this. And other service, if we look at the commercial transactions in totality, then if this is used on the same platform, then the supply chain traceability is achieved quite naturally. So we are also trying to achieve that. And we are assuming to hold or keep in custody of the various nodes, but it's possible for companies to establish nodes within their firewall. So it's just a communication between nodes. So if we do a network mapping, then we can process immediately. And also, it can be placed on the cloud overseas as well. We can do the processing between the node, the communication. And what we are expecting from the overseas the cloud is that there are increasing number of companies that are regulating data, so China and Russia. And for the personal information, there are regulations of not allowing personal information to be taken outside the company. So we will create this type of scheme in Japan as Japan. And for those countries where the data restrictions placed, then we can establish a quota-based system within those companies with a node. Then we can engage in the global transaction. And last point is for those people considering to introduce a blockchain business. And often one is asked to come up with the business plan using blockchain, but it's difficult. So data security or the service provider is unable to see the data. So the global response and the scalability of the functionality. So once you've established the blockchain, the foundation, then it's quite easy to scale the functionality. So there is a benefit in terms of scalability going forward in that respect. And something that you need to be careful in terms of technology is that when establishing IT infrastructure, and not to the OS level, but including the blockchain platform establishment, it does require a lot of manuals. So Azure or the Host Operation tool or CIC tool, people who are quite versed in these technologies should be hired. And application development 80% or infrastructure 20%. That is a normal case for the development, but IT infrastructure and the development accounts for 70 to 80% initially, but 30% for, and that's a kind of IT the burden to begin with. We need to be prepared. Also, it's the purely the dispersed system, so there are many the exceptional the processing, and it's quite many. So it's important to secure engineers who are well versed in that dispersed or decentralized systems. And the biggest bottleneck for doing a blockchain is the initial the building cost. When expanding a function, the high function can be developed quite simply, but initially there is a high IT infrastructure cost, which is likely to push up the cost. And so it's important for the management level as well to be in understanding of this in advance. Otherwise, the progress is somewhat limited. This completes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. That was Mr. Koketsu. Now, let me invite Mr. Okuyama and Mr. Abe to take the floor. I'm nervous. I get stage fright. I will speak in Japanese. I would like to focus on a POC, POC, a pilot project on automated insurance claims payment request, and we represent Sumitomo Life Insurance Company. Let me introduce ourselves. We are Okuyama and Abe, and two of us will be giving this presentation. And we belong to Digital Innovation Office at Sumitomo Life Insurance Company. We have different backgrounds, so to speak. I've worked with our branch offices, but I spent many years doing claims payment. Mr. Abe, in contrast, is a systems IT professional, IT specialist. So honestly speaking, blockchain and details of the systems, I'm afraid I'm not familiar with. So Mr. Abe will be talking about the key aspects of the technologies in the latter half of this presentation. Now, we would like to talk about the POC, the proof of concept. And we are working with a number of hospitals, medical institutions, and life insurance companies, and we want to realize automatic claims processing. And participants were TIS, a system vendor, and Kitahara Hospital Group. We've worked with the TIS and Kitahara Hospital Group to conduct this POC. And this is the problem statement or pain point that we wanted to address through the POC. And this is the gist of the pain point. Simply put, at present, the patient himself or herself has to obtain billing documents and medical certificates before requesting for claims payment. It is currently very onerous and time-consuming because 9 years ago, I myself experienced a great East Japan earthquake, and I used to work for a claims payment division, and I've had to handle a lot of claims processing. And I found that claim processing could be made more convenient by leveraging IT, and that is where this all has. This is where it all started. And this is a comparison of traditional claims payment requests and pilot. On the left, you are seeing traditional claims processing. Hospitals, patients, and insurers have to go back. You have to go back and forth. And life insurers, carriers have seen progress in terms of digitalization. So we have introduced some digital billing, but basically this is what's happening on the traditional side. But the pilot or the POC is in the POC. We got prior consent for claims payment request between the patient, between the hospital and life insurer. So we are using smart contract for the purpose of claims processing or claims payment request, so that there will be an automatic processing. And needless to say, the number of hospitals, number of carriers, insurers, there are many. Therefore, patients will have to work with different players, but using blockchain technologies, the information on the patient can be shared amongst different stakeholders in the process. So let me give the floor to Mr. Abe from here onwards. Thank you. I'm Abe, Sumitomo Life. I would like to discuss why we've chosen a blockchain technology and why CODA. And through the POC, what are the findings that we now have? So why blockchain? To be more specific, distributed ledger technology. Why is it that we've chosen this technology? There are multiple players in the process of claim processing, and we had to address the situation where there are multiple players. And it doesn't have to be a blockchain, a central system API. Centralized system API, use of API could be possibilities, but we have players from different industries and we have competitors in this process. There is a question as to how much we can share information and to what extent can we delegate authorities. So there is a lack of trust amongst players in the process, how to share data. We could use API, but can we align the use of API? If we were to achieve that, it could be costly. Relatively speaking, a blockchain could address many of these challenges. That is why we decided to experiment with blockchain. So that's the first point. The second point, the lower half of this slide, And as I said, we are talking about a situation where we have different stakeholders involved. And as long as we can achieve mutual verification, we can generate value from data. So that is the feature that we wanted to experiment. As you can see, we wanted to focus on verify. So from trust to verify. That was the second point. Then why is it that we have chosen Corda for our POC? We are talking about handling of medical information amongst different players, different stakeholders. And health and medical information is private. You cannot make this information public. And even within a consortium, there obviously is a need to limit the sharing of information. In the case of Corda, it's permissioned network and peer-to-peer, so there is no broadcasting of data to all nodes. So Corda is could be suitable for this kind of a situation. And the second reason for choosing Corda was the following: to protect data sufficiently. And this is one of the features of Corda. That is another reason why we've chosen Corda. And although you don't see it on the slide, we can build a system with standardized technologies which have been standardized to a great extent. So those were the reasons for choosing Corda. As I've discussed already, standardized technologies and benefits of blockchain could have been verified. In order to leverage on these benefits and strength of blockchain, what are the findings that we have found through POC? There are mainly 3 points. First, as the number of nodes increase, and as the communications with notary nodes increase, processing time tend to increase. So we have to distinguish between data to be shared amongst everybody and those are shared only within a minimized scope. And this was a major finding that we could leverage in the future experiments. Having said that, if it were an operation which doesn't require genuine real-time data sharing, then the increase in processing time is not that material. Second point, inconsistencies and fraud at the time of data entry could not be eliminated in full. We need to ensure authenticity by data entry mechanism, and we need to identify operational data with continuity, which has to be shared and managed on the blockchain. The data which will never have to be updated, and the data which will not serve for the purpose of other processing, those do not need to be verified, and those do not necessarily have to be on blockchain. The third point, maybe this was due to lack of understanding on my part. You may have this image that you can easily add nodes and delete nodes on the blockchain, but peer-to-peer permission type. So it is somewhat onerous to add or delete nodes. So that was the third finding. So going forward, we will have to work with multiple healthcare institutions, life insurance, and players in other industries and public sector players. So we need to achieve cross-industry. And at the same time, we need to work with family members of policyholders. So we will have to combine both public and private. So that is the universe or world that we will have to be looking at, and not just billing or claims payment requests, but other life insurance operations and services that have not been made available to policyholders. It could be possible based on the foundation, which should be based on the POC that we have done this time. That's all from Sumitomo Life. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And lastly, Ms. Murakami from EY.
では、EY アドバイザリーコンサルティングの皆さん
From EY Advisory and Consulting, my name is Murakami, and I would like to talk about providing support for the local government utilizing a distributed ledger technology. And let me briefly introduce our company. We are EY Japan Group, and we are auditing firm, and we're also a tax firm, and we also provide transaction service, advisory service, and where I belong to, the consulting firm. So we provide services under these 4 lines. And ourselves, we are a consulting firm, and so we are providing support to improving efficiency of our clients or help in terms of enabling our clients to improve their top line. And self-introduction. Around 7 years ago, I joined EY, and after that, I have mostly been involved in providing operational efficiency improvement for financial institutions or providing support for business transformation utilizing new technologies. And from my previous position, I was part of the financial system venture, and I was involved in the development of the overnight the transaction system and then worked on the system development using distributed caching technology. So I've always liked distributed or a decentralized technology. And in that respect, I have always been interested in the blockchain. And around 2 years ago, I have started to find a lot of interest in blockchain games. And I really enjoy playing these blockchain games. And what I'd like to talk about today and is in response to COVID-19. As part of the EY group, we are on a global basis from the various countries. We receive information on a real-time basis regarding various initiatives taken in those countries, and we try to take reference on that to identify something that we may be able to introduce in Japan. And we've been working on this from around spring. Now, acceleration of benefit payments, and this is the theme that I want to address today. So from the government to the individuals or for the SMEs, various the subsidies or benefits are being provided. So in this respect, whether it be in US or Germany, it's attracted a lot of interest in a similar way. And they have also paid out benefits. And we have received information from a US team. And in US, they have a program called PPP, Payment Protection Program. And they was an example of where RPA was utilized to provide support. And towards the left of this illustration, the applicant will make an application to financial institution, then financial institution will process that and will make that payment. That's the kind of scheme established for PPP. But and the RPA is introduced into the financial institutions and to enable automation to accelerate the process. That is where we provided the support, and the benefit payment was essentially completed within about a week. So that's the kind of information we received, and we were looking at where we may be able to introduce automation in Japan as well. But in the case of Japan, there are many the forms and documents that need to be submitted, and they need to be checked and verified, and so we just can't introduce RPA to automate. So it didn't really fit the situation in Japan, this example from the US. So the bottleneck is the checking or the verification. And there are 3 points that need to be checked or verified. First, by the local government. They need to identify those the person to be provided with benefit. On the 31st of July, those people who are registered on the official register, so need to identify those people who are eligible to the benefit. And I need to verify that the identity of that person, and also need to verify that the person has a bank account under his or her name. So these 3 points needs to be checked or verified. If we are able to lower the burden of one of these 3, then we felt that the benefit payment can be accelerated. And what we had tried to look into was the personal or the verification of identity and verification of account. So we were thinking as to whether we are able to utilize the identity verification information that is held by other entities. Of course, those information being held by local government needs to be verified by local government. But we felt that we may be able to share information regarding the information verifying his or her identity, and that information is being held by the financial institution. So financial institution, the information and the local government information being shared upon the distributed ledger, and that is an example that I want to talk about today. But on the other hand, for financial institutions, they already have verified the identity of individuals and corporations who has already established banking account within their banks. But from the local government's perspective, the local government may have identified the account to which the payment should go to, but the financial institution does not know whether there is that linkage. So the local government with the application can go to the financial institution. And by this, if this can verify that one has the right to receive the benefit, then we felt that payment of the benefit could be done by the financial institution. So from local government, the application document is sent to the individual, and the individual using this application document will go to the financial institution, and the financial institution would will make the benefit payment, and for the total amount of a benefit payment done by the financial institution, they will in fact make a report to the local government, and they will be reimbursed for the amount. And we already had discussion with these financial institutions, and on a paper basis, some of the financial institutions have already engaged in some activities. And furthermore, we wanted to avoid using paper, so we wanted to use a shared ledger in order to digitalize the process. And through this initiative, we have started to see the utilization of the shared ledger. So the local government will register those individuals who are eligible to receive the benefit. And the applicant will make the application to the financial institution, and the financial institution, based on the application, will check for the payment on the shared ledger. And if a payment has not been made for that person, then they will check and then register. And if there is no problem, the payments are also made. And in the end, the financial institution will charge the local government for the amount that has been paid, and the local government will reimburse the financial institution for the amount which is being paid out by financial institutions as benefit. And for this scheme, we are currently working on the development using Coda right now. And the reason why we selected Coda is because it is easy to control a type of transaction where the transaction is shared only amongst the participants. Now, EWAP's chain is a blockchain that we have within a company, and also on a global basis, there are various platforms being used to do the proof of concept studies. But the use case on this occasion we have used the shared ledger, and and we wanted to share the transaction only amongst the parties involved. And so in that respect, we felt that Coda was easy to use, so we used Coda to do the development. And as was mentioned previously, and data, the cost for there are more than 1,700 local government, and there are some 120 or so financial institutions. And the data needs to be held as a multiplication of the two, and that would be quite difficult. But on this use case, we didn't need to copy the data for irrelevant financial institutions or local governments. So in that respect, the design could be made quite simple, and that's the reason we use Coda. As for the future, we are currently talking with the local governments in the Kanto region and also with the financial institutions who have the close relationship with these local governments. We are currently examining the details. Based on the development of the system, well, what we have identified on this occasion is that it takes more time to try to work on the details of what to be developed rather than the development itself. But we are making preparation to start the operation from winter this year, and hopeful of being able to make a report once we achieve physical progress.
Thank you, Ms. Murakami. Before we close, briefly, I would like to summarize what we have discussed. You have shared with us where you are in terms of your projects. Thank you. For our audience, I'm sure the presentations have contained highly useful advice. There are a number of things. Issues that can be resolved by blockchain. There are such issues, but the blockchain is not the panacea. For example, in the case of Sumitomo Life, data entry discrepancies cannot be addressed by the technology of blockchain. Meanwhile, by using blockchain, more than one players, you can address fault in the process with multiple players, and high security and high availability. It can be realized, so that makes a blockchain platform apart from other technologies. In addition, through these projects have been highly productive, and in the case of TTS, what is the ultimate stage? TTS is already looking at from a longer perspective with a vision in mind. But people on the ground are rushing to achieve results, so they are starting from where they can already achieve results. We still have a little more time. Maybe not. But I guess the time is up. So with that, I would like to close this session. Again, thank you very much for your cooperation, and thank you for your interest. Thank you. With that, we would like to bring to a close Blockchain Beyond the FinTech. I would like to thank the panelists, Mr. Koketsu, Mr. Okuyama, Mr. Abe, and Ms. Murakami. And we would like to also thank the moderator, Mr. Yamada. Thank you.